Before Steph Curry was raining threes from the logo, before the Splash Brothers rewired the game, before the Warriors became one of the league's most unstoppable dynasties, they were something else entirely. This is their full saga, every rise, every fall, every championship, explained. The journey starts in the 1940s when the Warriors won basketball's very first championship. But what followed was chaos. They moved cities, lost legends, stumbled through decades of heartbreak, and even became the laughingstock of the league. And yet, every time the Warriors were counted out, they found a way back. Rick Barry shocked the world in 1975. Run TMC lit up the Bay in the 90s. We Believe toppled a giant in 2007. And then, Steph Curry arrived. And nothing about basketball would ever look the same again. But to understand how the Warriors became legends, you have to start at the very beginning, in Philadelphia, where basketball's first championship was born. The NBA's first champions, 1946 to 1949. The story of the Warriors' greatness begins at the very birth of professional basketball. In 1946, when the Basketball Association of America launched, Philadelphia was one of its cornerstone franchises. They weren't yet Golden State, just the Philadelphia Warriors, but they were about to etch their name in history. Led by a scoring machine named Joe Fulks, the Warriors became the league's very first champions in 1947. Fulks was basketball's first true superstar, a player who shattered every mold of the era. While most players relied on slow-set shots, Fulks unleashed a one-handed jump shot that looked futuristic for its time. Fans had never seen anything like it, and neither had defenses. He averaged more than 23 points per game in a league where teams rarely broke 70. The Warriors captured the inaugural title by beating the Chicago Stags, and just like that, they had written the NBA's opening chapter. A year later, they were back in the finals, proving they weren't a fluke. In a sport still trying to find its footing, the Warriors were already setting the standard. But basketball changes fast, and the 1950s turned the Warriors into a team of highs, lows, and constant uncertainty. The Rollercoaster Warriors, 1950 to 1959. The 1950s were anything but steady for the Warriors. They opened the decade still competitive, reaching the playoffs in 1950, 1951, and 1952, but each time ran into the Syracuse Nationals and bowed out early. Meanwhile, the game's first true superstar, Joe Fulks, began to fade. Once the league's unstoppable scorer, the man who introduced the jump shot to basketball, Fulks battled injuries and age until finally retiring in 1954. His exit marked the end of the Warriors' original era. The middle of the decade was rough. Losing records, dwindling crowds, and a team searching for direction. But just when it looked like the Warriors were slipping into irrelevance, they delivered one shining moment. In 1956, behind Paul Arizin, Neil Johnston, and rookie Tom Gola, the Warriors surged to another title, beating the Fort Wayne Pistons in the finals. The glory didn't last. Philadelphia made the playoffs again in 1957 and 1958, only to fall short, first against Syracuse and then against Boston. By 1959, the Warriors were back out of the postseason, their brief spark fading once again. But as the 1950s closed, the Warriors' future hinged on three players: a teenage giant who would shatter records, a rugged big man who would anchor the defense, and a fiery scorer destined to redefine leadership. Wilt, Nate, Barry, and the move to the Bay, 1960 to 1969. The 1960s were a decade of upheaval for the Warriors, and at the center was Wilt Chamberlain. In 1959, he arrived as a rookie straight out of Philadelphia, and from the moment he stepped on the court, basketball had never seen anything like him. Wilt wasn't just dominant, he was overwhelming. In 1962, he scored 100 points in a single game, a record that still stands untouched. By 1962, the franchise itself packed up and moved west, becoming the San Francisco Warriors. Wilt carried the Warriors to the 1964 NBA Finals, but time and again, he ran into Bill Russell's Celtics dynasty and left without a ring. He was the league's most unstoppable force, but frustration grew. And in 1965, the Warriors did the unthinkable. They traded him back to Philadelphia to the 76ers. It left the Warriors searching for a new identity, and they found it in a young big man named Nate Thurmond. Drafted in 1963, Thurmond grew into the heart of the Warriors' defense, a rebounding machine and one of the league's toughest defenders. While Wilt rewrote record books in Philly, Thurmond became Golden State's anchor, a warrior in every sense. And then came a new star. In 1965, the team drafted Rick Barry, a fiery scorer with a game as unorthodox as it was unstoppable. By 1967, Barry and Thurmond led the Warriors back to the NBA Finals, only to fall cruelly to Wilt's 76ers. The 60s ended with the Warriors transformed, Wilt gone, Barry rising, Thurmond holding down the middle, and a franchise carving out its identity on the West Coast. But the chaos of the 60s set the stage for one of the NBA's greatest shocks, a title run no one saw coming. Miracle in Oakland. How the Warriors shocked the world, 1970 to 1979. The 1970s began with the Warriors climbing back into contention and making a move across the bay. In 1971, the franchise left San Francisco for Oakland, rebranding themselves as the Golden State Warriors. With Nate Thurmond anchoring the defense and Rick Barry returning from the ABA in 1972, they made the playoffs 6 times that decade, battling Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's Bucks, going toe-to-toe with the Lakers and looking for a moment like one of the West's elite. But in 1974, everything shifted. After more than a decade as the franchise's rock, Thurmond was traded to Chicago. Just 1 year later, the Warriors pulled off the unthinkable, and he wasn't there to see it. In 1975, Barry led an unheralded cast. Rookie Jamal Wilkes, Clifford Ray, Butch Beard, into the finals against the powerhouse Washington Bullets. Nobody gave Golden State a chance, but Barry was unstoppable, averaging nearly 30 points per game, and the Warriors didn't just win. They swept the Bullets in 4 games. It was one of the biggest upsets in NBA history, a miracle championship that stunned the league. For Barry, it was redemption. For Thurmond, it was bittersweet, a title that came just after his time. But the success didn't last. The Warriors won 59 games in 1976, but fell in the Western Conference Finals, then made one last playoff run in 1977 before fading again. By the end of the decade, Barry was aging, Thurmond was long gone, and the momentum of 75 had vanished. The 70s proved the Warriors could rise again, but it was fleeting. One magical title, a handful of playoff runs, and then another slide into the shadows. It would be 40 years before the Warriors were champions again. And in that long drought, the Warriors tried everything. New stars, new styles, and even a run-and-gun trio that looked like Showtime's rivals in the making. Run TMC, the fastest show in basketball, 1980 to 1991. The 1980s were mostly misery for the Warriors. Year after year, they missed the playoffs, burning through coaches and draft picks. Between 1980 and 1986, Golden State never even cracked the postseason. Finally, in 1987, a spark arrived. Led by Chris Mullin, the Warriors snuck into the playoffs, stunning the Utah Jazz in the first round before running into Magic Johnson's Lakers. It was a glimpse of what the Bay had been waiting for, but it didn't last. By 1988, the team had collapsed again, sinking to just 20 wins. Then in 1988, the Warriors drafted Mitch Richmond, who won Rookie of the Year and gave the franchise its first real star since Rick Barry. 1 year later, in 1989, they drafted Tim Hardaway, whose killer crossover became an instant nightmare for defenders. Paired with Mullin, the sharpshooter already carrying the franchise, the trio officially came together in the 1989-90 season. Fans gave them a name, Run TMC. They were Showtime without the Hollywood lights. While the Lakers dazzled in LA, Run TMC turned Oakland into chaos on hardwood. Hardaway's handles, Richmond's power, Mullin's smooth jumper. Together, they scored faster than anyone in the league, averaging 116 points per game. Games in Oakland felt like track meets. Blink and you'd miss a bucket. Their first season together, they missed the playoffs despite the fireworks. But in 1991, they finally had their moment. Run TMC torched the San Antonio Spurs in the first round, with Hardaway dazzling and Mullen at his peak. But in the second round, Magic's Lakers once again crushed their dream. And then, just as quickly as it began, it was over. In November of 1991, the Warriors stunned fans by trading Richmond to Sacramento, breaking up the trio after only 2 full seasons together. Run TMC was short-lived, but for those 2 years, they were the fastest show in basketball. Chaotic, unforgettable, and still one of the most exciting experiments the NBA has ever seen. And when Run TMC ended, the Warriors were left chasing flickers of hope that would fade just as quickly as they appeared. Wasteland, the lost years in Golden State, 1992 to 2006. The Warriors actually entered the 1990s with hope. In 1992, even after trading Mitch Richmond and breaking up Run TMC, they won 55 games, one of the best records in franchise history. Chris Mullin was at his peak, Tim Hardaway was electric, and for a moment, it felt like the team might finally be turning the corner. But in the playoffs, the dream collapsed fast. The Warriors were bounced in the first round by the Seattle Supersonics, 3-1. 2 years later, in 1994, hope returned. With rookie Chris Webber, Latrell Sprewell, Mullin, and Hardaway, Golden State won 50 games and looked like the West's next rising power. But once again, it didn't last. The Warriors were swept out of the first round by Charles Barkley's Phoenix Suns, and the fallout was immediate. Webber clashed with coach Don Nelson and forced his way out after just 1 season. What could have been a dynasty-building core evaporated overnight. From there, the spiral deepened. Sprewell became the face of the team, but his infamous chokehold incident on coach P.J. Carlesimo in 1997 turned him into a cautionary tale. Even the last remnants of Run TMC disappeared. Tim Hardaway was traded in 1996, and Chris Mullin left for Indiana in 1997. By the late 90s, the stars were gone, and the franchise was back in the lottery. Again. The early 2000s didn't bring much relief. The Warriors whiffed on draft picks, cycled through coaches, and piled up losing seasons. Oracle stayed loud, because Warriors fans are some of the most loyal in sports. But the team gave them nothing to cheer for. By 2006, the franchise had missed the playoffs for 12 straight years, the longest drought in the NBA. For Warriors fans, this era was pure frustration. 2 fleeting playoff cameos in 92 and 94, then a collapse into nothingness. It was the definition of a basketball wasteland. But in 2007, all that misery finally broke. And what happened next shocked the entire basketball world. We believe the greatest upset in NBA history, 2007. By 2007, Warriors fans had been waiting over a decade just to taste the playoffs again. Oracle Arena was still loud, still loyal, but the team hadn't given the Bay anything to believe in. That all changed in one unforgettable spring. The Warriors snuck into the playoffs as the 8th seed with a 42-40 record. Their first postseason appearance since 1994. Their reward? A matchup with the Dallas Mavericks, who had just finished with 67 wins, the best record in the NBA. It looked like a mismatch. David versus Goliath. Goliath. But this wasn't the same old Warriors. Led by Baron Davis, Steven Jackson, and Monta Ellis, Golden State had swagger, toughness, and a fearless energy that matched perfectly with Coach Don Nelson's up-tempo chaos. And Oracle became a madhouse. The crowd was deafening, the atmosphere unlike anything in basketball. Then came the shock. The Warriors didn't just hang with Dallas, they overwhelmed them. Baron Davis bullied Jason Terry, Steven Jackson buried threes, and the defense swarmed Dirk Nowitzki into one of the worst series of his career. In 6 games, the Warriors pulled off what many still call the greatest upset in NBA history. An 8th seed knocking out a 67-win giant. The We Believe run ended in the next round against Utah, but it didn't matter. For Warriors fans, that season wasn't about a title. It was about identity. After years in the wilderness, Golden State finally had a team that reflected the heart of the Bay. fearless, loud, and unforgettable. But as magical as 2007 was, it didn't spark a dynasty. Not yet. That would come from a skinny kid drafted 2 years later, a player who would change the sport forever. The baby-faced assassin changes everything, 2009 to 2014. By the late 2000s, the Warriors were still defined by chaos. We believe in 2007 had given the Bay its greatest moment in years, but just as quickly, that magic was gone. Golden State slipped right back into losing seasons until a skinny kid from Davidson walked through the door on June 25th, 2009. His name was Wardell Stephen Curry II, and at first, not everyone believed. Too small, too fragile, ankles made of glass. For years, injuries kept him from showing the world what he could really do. But whenever he was on the floor, it was clear something different was happening. Curry wasn't just a shooter. He was a weapon no one in basketball had ever seen. He pulled up from 30 feet like it was a layup, and when he got hot, Oracle turned into a thunderstorm. By 2013, the baby-faced assassin was fully unleashed. Curry dropped 54 points in Madison Square Garden against the Knicks, one of the greatest shooting performances the league had ever seen. The Warriors, now paired with another sharpshooter in Klay Thompson, began rewriting the geometry of the game. Together, they became the Splash Brothers, the most dangerous backcourt in basketball. In 2013, the Warriors made the playoffs for the first time since 2007, stunning the Denver Nuggets in the first round. For the first time in decades, it felt like the future wasn't a false promise. It was real, and soon that future would explode. Because by 2015, the Splash Brothers weren't just contenders, they were the spark that lit a dynasty. The Dynasty Begins, 2015 to 2016. By 2015, the Golden State Warriors weren't just a young team on the rise. They were about to flip basketball upside down. When Steve Kerr took over as head coach, he unleashed the roster in a way nobody had before. The offense became a symphony of passing, spacing, and speed. Draymond Green emerged as the defensive heartbeat, Klay Thompson as the silent assassin, and Steph Curry as the unstoppable engine. That year, Curry's confidence went from dangerous to downright terrifying. He didn't just shoot threes, he launched them from distances that used to be unthinkable. Defenders couldn't keep up, coaches had no schemes for it, and Oracle Arena turned into a firestorm every night. The Warriors finished with 67 wins, the best record in the league, and stormed through the playoffs. In the finals, they toppled LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers, giving Golden State his first championship in 40 years. Andre Iguodala earned Finals MVP. Curry won the regular season MVP, and the dynasty had officially begun. But the next season, that's when Curry detonated. In 2016, he delivered one of the most outrageous seasons the league had ever seen. 30 points per game, 402 three-pointers, a 50-40-90 shooting split, and the first unanimous MVP in NBA history. Every game felt like a show. Curry would dribble across half court, pull from 30 feet, and crowds would gasp before the ball even hit the net. Analysts weren't asking if he was the best shooter ever. They were asking if he was breaking basketball itself. The Warriors fed off it, rolling to a 73-9 record. The best regular season in NBA history, surpassing Jordan's 96 Bulls. They made the impossible look routine. There was joy, dominance, and inevitability every time Golden State took the court. But then came the finals. Up 3-1 against Cleveland, the Warriors were on the verge of the greatest season ever. And then it unraveled. Draymond's suspension in Game 5. LeBron's chase-down block in Game 7. Kyrie Irving's dagger 3. In an instant, 73 wins ended in heartbreak. The Warriors became the first team in finals history to blow a 3-1 lead. It was a cruel twist. A season so historic, yet remembered more for its collapse than its brilliance. And for the Warriors, it wasn't just a loss, it was a wound. But that wound didn't close. It opened the door. And what walked through it would change the NBA forever. Durant joins the dynasty, 2017 to 2019. The Warriors were already great. They had Steph, Klay, Draymond, 73 wins, and the unanimous MVP. But after the heartbreak of 2016, Golden State didn't just reload, they detonated the league. In the summer of 2016, the unthinkable happened. Kevin Durant, one of the best scorers the game had ever seen, signed with the Warriors. The decision shook the NBA to its core. A team that already felt unstoppable now had a 7-foot sniper who could get 30 in his sleep. Critics called it unfair. Fans called it the end of competition. But for Golden State, it was the beginning of basketball at its highest form. From the moment Durant suited up, the Warriors looked inevitable. The 2017 playoffs were a demolition. Golden State went 16-1, the most dominant postseason run in league history, with Durant earning Finals MVP after torching LeBron and the Cavaliers. The Warriors weren't just champions, they were supercharged. The following season, it was more of the same. Even when challenges came, the Warriors had an answer. Durant's scoring, Steph's shooting, Klay's defense, and Draymond's playmaking made them feel like 4 All-Stars moving as one. They beat Cleveland again in 2018, giving Durant back-to-back Finals MVPs and cementing Golden State as the league's ultimate villain and ultimate juggernaut. But with dominance came cracks. Injuries piled up, the pressure of constant success mounted, and whispers of tension between Durant and Draymond grew louder. By 2019, the dynasty looked both inevitable and fragile at the same time. The Warriors still marched to a 5th straight Finals, but this time, the bodies started breaking. Durant strained his right calf in the 2nd round against Houston and missed weeks. He tried to return in Game 5 of the Finals against Toronto, and just 12 minutes in, disaster struck. Driving to the basket, Durant ruptured his right Achilles tendon. He collapsed, clutching his leg, and the dynasty collapsed with him. Then came Game 6. Klay Thompson, already playing through a hamstring strain earlier in the series, went up for a dunk on a fast break. He was fouled, landed awkwardly, and tore his left ACL. He sank 2 free throws before limping to the locker room. But he wouldn't play again for over a year. The Raptors finished the job, winning the 2019 title, and the Warriors super team era was suddenly over. That summer, Durant left for Brooklyn, and the franchise said goodbye to another home, leaving Oracle Arena in Oakland after 47 years and moving back across the bay to Chase Center in San Francisco. With Durant gone, Klay sidelined, and a brand new arena waiting, the future had never felt more uncertain. But even stripped of Durant, even with Klay gone, the Warriors weren't finished, because Steph Curry still had another chapter to write, his own redemption. Redemption. Steph finally gets his Finals MVP, 2020 to 2022. After the collapse of 2019, the dynasty looked finished. Kevin Durant was gone. Klay Thompson was sidelined with a torn ACL, and then during rehab, tore his Achilles too. Draymond Green was banged up, and Steph Curry broke his hand just 4 games into the 2019-20 season. For the first time in years, the Warriors were back at the bottom, finishing with the worst record in the league. The dynasty that once felt invincible suddenly looked fragile, even mortal, but Golden State refused to disappear. As Curry healed, he came back in 2021 playing like a man possessed. He led the league in scoring at 32 points per game, hitting shots that seemed impossible even by his standards. Night after night, he carried an undermanned roster, keeping the Warriors competitive and reminding the league that his reign wasn't over. They missed the playoffs that year after falling short in the play-in tournament, but the fire was back. Then came 2022, the year everything clicked again. With Klay Thompson finally returning after 2.5 lost seasons, Draymond anchoring the defense, and young pieces like Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins stepping up, the Warriors found their rhythm. Curry was still the centerpiece, still the most dangerous shooter alive, but now he had the perfect balance of veteran champions and hungry newcomers around him. The playoffs were a throwback. Golden State's system, their ball movement, their experience overwhelming opponents. By the time they reached the finals, the Warriors weren't the hunted anymore. They were the hunters. Facing a young, hungry Boston Celtics team, Curry delivered the defining performance of his career. In Game 4 in Boston, With the Warriors down 2-1 in the series, Curry unleashed 43 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 threes, silencing the crowd and saving the dynasty. It was a masterpiece, the kind of performance that swung the series and cemented his legacy. 2 games later, Golden State closed it out. The Warriors were champions again. And finally, after all the rings, all the records, all the threes, Steph Curry held the one trophy he'd been missing: Finals MVP. For Curry, it wasn't just another championship, it was vindication. Proof that he could lead a team back to the top, even after the dynasty looked dead. For the Warriors, it was redemption. A reminder that their story wasn't over. But dynasties never last forever. And as the Warriors enter their twilight years, the question isn't what they've already done. It's whether they can still find one more miracle. Can the dynasty survive? 2023 to present. By 2023, the Warriors had done it all. 4 titles in 8 years, Steph's Finals MVP, and a dynasty that changed basketball forever. But time catches up, even with legends. Cracks began to show. Tension inside the locker room boiled over when Draymond Green punched Jordan Poole in practice, a moment that never fully healed. By the summer of 2023, Poole was gone, traded to the Wizards for Chris Paul. 1 year later, the dynasty lost another pillar. In July 2024, Klay Thompson left for Dallas after 13 seasons, officially ending the Splash Brothers era. Then came a jolt no one saw coming. In February 2025, Golden State landed 6-time All-Star Jimmy Butler in a blockbuster trade with Miami. It was a bold gamble, sending out Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, and future picks for a 35-year-old star. But it screamed urgency. Butler's toughness, leadership, and playoff scars made him the perfect warrior for a team refusing to fade quietly. The message was clear: the dynasty wasn't done swinging. After that move, the spotlight shifted to Jonathan Kuminga. Drafted in 2021, he began flashing the kind of talent that could define Golden State's next chapter. Explosive, athletic, and still just scratching the surface, Kuminga's rise has made him the ultimate wild card. Is he the bridge to the future, or the final trade chip in chasing one more ring with Steph, Draymond, and now Butler? The truth is, nobody knows how this story ends. Maybe there's one more miracle left. Maybe Father Time finally wins. But history says this: the Warriors always find a way to rewrite the game. Because from Philly to the Bay, from Wilt to Rick Barry, from Run TMC to the Splash Brothers, one thing has never changed. The Warriors always write basketball's wildest chapters. This was Every Era of the Warriors Explained. Stay legendary.